my name is Rachel, and I'm here tonight with some awesome new books that are going to be released tomorrow, which is May 17th, 2016. Now, I've got quite a few, so let's just jump in and get a very brief description of some of these, and at the end, please feel free to let me know which ones of these that you like the most. I know I'm excited for most of these, so let's jump in. The first one is called Dead Distillers, A History of the Upstarts and Outlaws Who Made American Spirits. And this is the second collaboration of Colin Spolman and David Haskell. Their first book was called The Guide to Urban Moonshine. And this book, Dead Distillers, follows 50 biographies of key players in the making of American spirits, and it has a big bourbon bottle on the front, and that's really what drew me in. I thought that just sounds really interesting. They did mention that there would be some surprises among the biographies, including some American presidents, so I thought that was interesting. And of course, this would span over the time of Prohibition as well, and it just sounds like a really neat adult nonfiction book coming out. Next up is Don't You Cry by Mary Kubica, I think is how you say her name. I've not read one of her books yet, but I know that she publishes a lot of well-known adult mysteries, and this one seems to be right along those same lines. This is the same author of The Good Girl, which I have seen many, many times here on BookTube and on Goodreads. And this story, Don't You Cry, her newest, follows the story of a girl who disappears in Chicago, leaving behind a mysterious letter, and her friends are wondering what happened to her. Meanwhile, a mysterious girl appears in Michigan, and the catch line that I saw in the reviews was that the past always catches up to us. So it makes you wonder, obviously, if there's a connection between these two girls. Perhaps they're the same girl, I don't know. But that there is a connection, and I wonder what she's running from. So I think that sounds interesting, and I know a lot of people really like The Good Girl, so this should be a good read as well. Next up is Girls on Fire by Robin Wasserman, and I believe this is going to be either an adult fiction or possibly what they are calling now as new adult, meaning it's a little bit more risque than young adult, probably aimed more at an older audience. And this follows the story of two girls. One is a good girl and one is kind of a bad girl with some mysterious things happening in her life, and a local suicide kind of brings them together in this crazy combination. It reminded me of like a Thelma and Louise type of relationship, and apparently something in the kind of bad girl's past really breaks up this duo, this Thelma and Louise run that they've got going. Several of the reviews mentioned that it was very, very good writing, but it was such a dark story. So just a heads up for that. Next up, we have Morgue, A Life and Death by Dr. Vincent DeMeo and crime writer Ron Frenchel. And this will tell the story of the doctor over his 40-plus years of working with autopsies and within the morgue. And I think it focuses on some key stories that he's experienced in his 40-plus years. I'm sure there are several, I don't want to call them mundane, that seems disrespectful, but unfamous, non-famous cases, as well as famous cases. One of the ones that caught my eye was Lee Harvey Oswald. This doctor was part of the exhumation of Lee Harvey Oswald, who was the assassin of JFK, and I just think that sounds interesting. I can't imagine doing that for a living, but I'm sure he's got really, really interesting stories. Next up is a book that I think sounds really, really cool, and I might look into it for my upcoming travel readathon, and that is called Mother Tongue by Christine Gilbert. The subtitle, which I like even more than the original title, is My Family's Globe-Trotting Quest to Dream in Mandarin, Laugh in Arabic, and Sing in Spanish. And I just think that sounds amazing. And this is basically like a travel memoir of Christine Gilbert. She decided to take her family on the road and travel the world, and it's just the story of her and her family as they travel through these countries and learn these languages. I think it really delves into how intertwined language and culture is in different places, and I think that she does kind of study linguistics a little bit. How we learn, probably how we take in language, and again, how it relates to the culture. So I think that just sounds amazing. A travel memoir plus all the languages, that just sounds like it's going to be an awesome read. And again, it's called Mother Tongue by Christine Gilbert. Next up is kind of an 80s themed young adult book that I think sounds really interesting. I've not read one like this before, so I'm looking forward to it. And that is called My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. And he also wrote Horror Store, which I still have not read yet, but I have hauled it before, and it was on a readathon TBR, and I just never got to it. And I'm so excited for both of these. I think they're going to be amazing. It seems like he usually tells really unique stories. For this one, it follows the story of two BFFs who hit high school, and once they are in high school, they kind of start drifting apart, and one believes the other is possessed, and that's why he's acting strangely and is kind of drifting away. So he enlists the help of some other allies. I'm not sure if that means students necessarily, I would assume, to try to save him and exorcise this demon from their friend. And again, this is all in an 80s theme, so I think that sounds really interesting. I would love to see how this all comes together. It sounds like, I think it kind of like a funny take, if you will, and an exaggerated take on just growing up in high school and the changes you face and dealing with changes in friends. So I think it's going to be an amazing book. Next up is another book that I think is kind of just a coming of age for high school kids, because that's such a rough time in life. And this one is called Places No One Knows by Brenna Yavanoff. And the first thing I noticed about this book is that it was blurbed by Maggie Stiefvater, so that's a bonus. The second, it's got, the colors on the cover are just striking, I think. I'm not sure necessarily if the image is, but that color just kind of grabs your attention, I think. But all that is just, you know, on the outside. On the inside, I think it's such a hard book to understand, I think, without having read it. And I haven't yet, so I don't feel like I'm going to be able to describe it well. But from what I know, it is about this girl who can dream herself into places, and she dreams herself into the bedroom of another teenage boy from her high school. And that's what I got. So that sounds pretty interesting. I do like that Maggie Stiefvater was the one that blurbed it, because it immediately made me think of Ronan from the Raven Boys series, the Raven Cycle. And I'm just excited. I think this is going to be one of those weird reads that it's hard to describe and it's hard to talk about, but that you can relate to and that you really enjoy. So again, that is called Places No One Knows by Brenna Yavanoff. Next up is another young adult fiction novel, and this one is called Silence is Goldfish by Annabelle Pitcher. I know Annabelle Pitcher wrote Ketchup Clouds, which I read a few years ago and I really liked. So I'm interested in this, even though I just feel like I didn't get much from the summary. This one mostly for me, the author is what grabbed my attention, not necessarily the description of the book, because I just didn't get much from it. All I can tell is that a girl reads something on her dad's like blog or journal or something, and it makes her go mute. She doesn't want to talk anymore. She doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't socialize, and she just has to work through all these emotions from whatever it is that she found in her dad's writing. And that's pretty compelling to me. I really want to know what the secret is. This made me kind of think of The Husband's Secret a little bit by Leanne Moriarty, and I'm interested. Like I said, I didn't get much from the summary, but I think I might give it a read just to see what's happening there. Next up is another young adult children's novel, and this one is called Some Kind of Happiness, and it's by Claire Legrand. This is about a girl whose family life is kind of hectic. Her parents are fighting, and because they're fighting, they send her to live with her grandmother, and she kind of escapes and withdraws into her imaginary world, this magical forest she's created. And then she discovers that this forest actually exists in the backyard part of the grandma's house. And again, I'm kind of reminded of Cabe's Water here with the Raven cycle, so I'm intrigued that this forest really exists, what happens there, and how does this tie into what seems like the main plot of the parent relationship and how it affects this girl. So I think this would be an interesting read, and again, I'm kind of intrigued by the connection my mind immediately made with the Raven cycle. Next up is Street of Eternal Happiness, The Winding Road to the Chinese Dream by Rob Schmitz, I believe. And this is just a collection of stories about the people who live on this one street, the Street of Eternal Happiness, in the middle of Shanghai. And it's a really busy street, and I feel like it has like a marketplace around it. It's just a really busy main part of Shanghai, and he just interviews these Chinese people about their dreams. And again, it seems like I'm not doing these justice at all, but the cover looks amazing, the idea of this sounds amazing, and I think this would just be a great read to kind of get out of your own culture and experience something else. We always hear the American dream, we never hear about the Chinese dream, so I just think that sounds really neat, and it sounds like a great way to add a little diversity to your reading list. Next up is another one that's really been hyped here on BookTube, and that is The Crown's Game by Evelyn Skye. This is the first in a new series, and this follows the story of two enchanters, which are basically like magicians, who are brought into a game that's created by the Tsar. And this is a YA historical fantasy, so it takes place around what seems to be the Ottoman Empire. And the Tsar sets up these games because to see which one of the enchanters is going to take on the role of the imperial enchanter and kind of come into the folds of the Tsar to help the kingdom be a little bit more powerful. In that element, it kind of reminds me of A Darker Shade of Magic, where their blood magicians in the different worlds called Antari are not really necessarily owned by the king, but basically they are. They just don't want to call it that. So it reminds me of that in a little bit, that they want to have this magician as part of their empire to make it a little bit more important. And it does seem like they're eventually going to be kind of like the property. So anyway, he does these games, and they don't really say it's to the death, but it kind of seems like it would be to the death, and then one of you dies and one of you becomes the imperial magician. But the one magician's a girl, one's a boy, so you know what happens. I think they kind of fall in love with each other. Or at least one does. I think the boy falls in love with her, and then the boy's best friend is the future king, the prince, and he falls in love with her as well. So now what are they going to do? You can't kill off, the love of both of these people. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens, if somebody saves somebody, how that would work in. Is there going to be favoritism then, that they like each other, but he's got a best friend, and I don't know. It sounds really kind of on the political side, which I think will be really good. I am worried a little bit with this one about the insta-love, so if you've read this one, let me know what you think. I'm really, really interested to hear some honest reviews on this book, but I think it's going to be pretty good. I'm planning to read it at some point. Who knows when I'm going to get time to read it, but I think it's going to be really good. Next up is another book that I'm excited about. I think this one's going to be pretty big here on BookTube, and that is The Only Thing Worse Than Me Is You, which I love that title. This is by Lily Anderson, and it follows the story of Trixie, who is a high school senior, I believe, and she has two goals. One is to raise enough money to buy the Doctor Who figurines that she wants, and the other is to bump her, arch nemesis Ben out of the third place in their school class system. She's willing to do a lot to beat her rival and get to that third spot. She's not sleeping as much. She's doing a lot of extra work and studying really hard to get that third spot away from Ben, who is, again, her arch nemesis. And then, right in, the throes of all of this fight for the third place, I think each one of their best friends start dating each other, so they're kind of thrust into the same social circles, and they've realized they have a lot more in common than what they thought. I get a kind of vibe of 10 Things I Hate About You a little bit. I'm not sure. It seems like it's gonna be like my favorite trope, which is when two characters like hate each other and then they slowly start to fall in love. I love those, very Pride and Prejudice-y, and I love it. I don't know though. It was hard to tell from the summary how things are gonna go, because it does seem like there's a scandal that kind of breaks everything up. So, I don't know. We'll have to read it to see. And again, that was The Only Thing Worse Than Me Is You. Next up is a Jennifer L. Armentrout book, which I have yet to read one of her books, but I know she's hugely popular here on the BookTube. Her new one is called The Problem with Forever, and this follows a student who's had a really troubled past. She's basically gone mute, and she's been homeschooled by her adoptive parents, and it is senior year, and they've all decided that she needs to try public school, even though she's still not speaking. And her first day back, she re-meets an old friend that she used to know and feel comfortable with, and they strike up a friendship again very quickly, just like before. However, it seems like his life is kind of unraveling now. So just from what I can tell, I would think that maybe she is trying to overcome her insecurities in order to help him because he's really struggling at that moment. But I don't know, so I think it'll be a good read. I'm getting a very contemporary vibe off this, though. I don't think it's going to be too heavy on the mystery and more on the contemporary, but I could be wrong. So anyway, that is The Problem with Forever, which sounds really good, and I also love this cover. It's so colorful. So yeah. Next up is a book that sounds kind of interesting. I'm not 100% sure about this one yet. I definitely want to read it because it piqued my interest. However, I'm not sure if I would add it to like one of my libraries, for instance. So I don't know. We'll see. It's called The Sleepover, and it's by Jen Malone. And literally the first thing you see on the Goodreads like summary is that it is a kid-friendly spoof of The Hangover. Sleepover, The Hangover. Do you get it? So my first thought was, how in the heck do you do a kid-friendly version of The Hangover? And it, like, the beginning of the synopsis sounds just like The Hangover. These girls all spent the night together, and they wake up, and one of them's eyebrows shaved off. There's chaos all around the room that they don't remember, and one of the girls is missing. And I'm thinking, how in the world do, like, small children end up like this? And in kind of a weird plot twist, I'm not sure how I feel about this part, but I guess as part of the evening festivities for the slumber party, they had a hypnotist come, and now they don't remember anything. So I like the idea of making The Hangover more child-friendly, because a lot of parents would take their kids to go see The Hangover, even though it's not necessarily appropriate for all ages. So I like that it kind of makes it more accessible to younger children. However, I'm not sure how it's going to play out. Next up is a graphic novel. I believe this is a bind-up of maybe 4 editions prior to this, but it's called Twilight Children by Gilbert Hernandez, and it is about this bright orb that washes up on a coast. I think it's maybe in like Brazil. It washes up on the coast, and these kids are kind of hitting it and messing with it, and it explodes, and it blinds all these kids. And about the same time, they find this beautiful young girl just wandering around the area, and the locals kind of think she's an alien, but they take her in anyway, and then the CIA gets involved. And that's really all I know about this, but I like the cover. It sounds kind of weird, and I haven't really heard about this before, so I'm interested to at least see what it's about and check it out. Next up is The Weekenders by Mary Kay Andrews, and this is just your typical kind of chick lit book. I think this will be perfect for the beach. This follows the story of a woman who lives either part-time or full-time on an island in North Carolina. I couldn't tell from the description if she lived there permanently or just vacation there. But she's set to meet her husband, and then she finds out, I think, that he's dead, and I think he's been murdered. And not only that, but all of the inheritance money and the money that was supposed to be there with their family is now gone. So her and her daughter have nothing, And as things begin to really sink in that they have no money and they're losing this house on the island, they delve into some of the mysteries of the husband's past. So this sounds interesting. Again, I really like the cover. This seems like a perfect beach read for the summer. And last up is another one that I'm really excited for. This is one that I'm hoping to get in my libraries. I think this is going to be a great children's book. It's called What Elephants Know by Eric Dinerstein. And the synopsis of this reminds me so much of The Jungle Book. I just think this is going to be awesome. It follows the story of a little boy who I guess was abandoned in the jungle. He was like 2, and they find him being raised by wolves. And I have ADD. Something just went by the window. I'm back now. This boy was abandoned when he was like 2, and the wolves were raising him, and he's discovered and brought into civilization, and he begins, I think, working with the king's elephants, and eventually the government wants to shut down the stable that the elephants are housed in, and this boy then tries to save the elephants who've kind of become his friends. And this just sounds amazing. It has, like I said, a very Jungle Book theme to it, and I'm very excited for it. So, whew, that was a lot of books, but I think there's going to be some really great reads coming out of tomorrow. If you have read any of these, please let me know down below. Which ones of these are you most excited to read? I'd love to hear. And that's what I got for you today. So thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and give this a like if you like this type of video, and hit that subscription button if you are new to the channel. And I will see you again very soon with another video. Bye for now.